Hey there, it's watercolor day again, and it's Rusty Nelson, your college art professor, and I am working on a scene today with a boat on the water. So we got water, reflections, we got a subject matter, and then we have a nice little supporting landscape in the background where I think we'll be able to do some nice soft wet on wet effects and combine that with some detail and structure on the focal point, the subject matter in the piece. I think it'll be a lot of fun. It's going to be definitely something that will challenge the beginner, intermediate, and even an advanced watercolor artist. So it's just a matter of practice. Get in there, put your reps in, get better at understanding the 3 stages and the 4 states of watercolor, the states and stages of your brush, how wet or dry your paper is. Juggle all those things in the air, and hopefully by the end of it, with some good creative decision making, you'll have a nice piece to show and get all sorts of accolades from your friends, neighbors, and relatives. So starting out, as always, with our color blocking and getting all that big scary white sheet of paper covered where it should be. So let's get started. All right, so like I said, this is going to be a nice little boat scene. The boat is the focal point. We're going to try to make it really stand out against the background, the landscape in the background. So this is the piece we're going to be working with. We'll see. I've already got it sketched up on the paper. I've taken plenty of liberties with it, but roughly in place where I want it to be in this composition. So let's get going. All right, here we are. And I'm going to get started mixing up. Really, this whole piece right here is going to be predominantly just coated with a blue. There's not a lot of hot highlights. There's a few up here on the shoreline. Whoop, there's some highlights up here along the shoreline, along the mountain tops here. We got another secondary mountain top. It's just right at the edge of the photograph. And maybe just a bit of highlights on the boat that I can kind of protect and keep. So first off is to get some colors mixed up. I'm going to use a little ultramarine, phthalo blue combination. Doesn't have to be real thick. This isn't going to be a really highly saturated first wash, because we'll be pulling some secondary washes into it. And I'm going to get a little more water going here. This first wash right up at the top. Then this is a really good exercise for you to practice your color washes. I'm working with an Arches 300-pound paper. Yeah, there we go. So I'm just pulling color down right along in here. I'm going to stop right there, and I'm going to try to keep a little bit of the highlight right along this edge, right in here. I'll just kind of create a I think I'm going to have to rescue them. So I'm going to go ahead and paint around the boat. I want to go ahead and lighten up, pull that color. Just has to be a real faint blue. I'll throw some of it up here on the boat. And it's all nice and soft right in through here. This watercolor paper will stay wet for quite a while, so I don't have to hurry terribly. There we go. I'll throw a little bit on this rock right here. So there we go. Got a nice soft, and I know this little spot right there is probably driving you absolutely bananas, but I'm just going to ignore that little spot. As soon as this dries just a little bit more, I'm going to come in with the same wash, same color, just add another layer into it. So, but it does need to dry a little bit. The piece is pretty saturated right now, and it just needs to dry before any progress can be made. So give it a second. All right, it's been drying for a few minutes, still damp, and because this is that slow, good paper, that it's going to really feather if I start introducing the second color onto it. So that's what I want in that distance. I want that nice, soft, feathered edge on the faraway hills in the background. So here we go. All right, I'm going to go ahead and We're going to get this edge right here. It's just the same wash, about the same consistency as the first one, but I'm just dropping it in to that wet sky, and it's feathering out very nicely. And you can do all sorts of fun stuff right now. I'm going to kind of create an irregular tree line right there. It's really dried right there, but it's soft right in through here. And I'm just going to come right along here, add a little more pigment in there. There we go, just perfect. Right there along those buildings are in the distance right there. And you really kick up that intensity of that color. I'm going to throw a little more of a, is that a phthalo there? There we go. I'm going to get a little of this blue. There we go. Oh, that's a steel blue. There we go. That's much darker. That's all right. So it's looking pretty cool. And I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to get my mop real quick. I'm going to use it as a rescue tool. I'm going to just simply soften this edge just a little bit, just so it feathers out. Perfect. All right. And then with this new color, let me get back to phthalo. There we go. I'm going to throw a similar amount right in here. I'm going to try to leave, oh, it's wet. I'm going to just put a little bit of that right out here as well. So it's just darker back there. There we go. And I'm just going to start just kind of scrubbing it out a little bit with these shapes like that, just to kind of get some of that shimmer starting to happen. And it's dried right in through there, so I'm getting some nice dry brush action happening. So back over to my mop, and I'm just going to soften some of that out. Just wanted it to be a little darker right in through here. All right, cool. That's got a neat feathered bloom effect going in there. So, and as that's still fairly wet, I'm going to get a little bit of this darker color. And I'm probably being impatient, so I'm just going to come in right with the tip of that little thing. I'm just going to add a little more of the color right along that edge. Just nice and soft. I want to create some irregular shapes leading up that hill, that mountain, right there. And just really letting the capillary effect of the wet on wet do some of the work right here. I'm going to throw it right up on this bloom right up there too. Right up in here. Then we'll pull it down. There we go. So we're getting some pretty cool looking effects. And then right on this edge again, I'm going to come right down here. It's going to feather right up to it. But I'm going to draw essentially a line, and it's wet, so it's going to be a soft, dark line right along there. That's looking pretty cool. All right. And then as that's drying, I'm going to put a little more of that color right up here on the boat. Comes right along in here, feathers down, and I'll just unload my brush and we'll just feather it out, pull it out. Unload my brush and we'll feather it the opposite way. There we go. Lots of blue in this piece. So this is a fairly straightforward, nice little exercise for a person to practice and get good at their states and stages. Okay. And then down here, this is really saturated. Right down here along the bottom of the boat. I'm going to pull it right up here on that painted edge. I'm going to pull it right down, and it's going to come right down like this. And it's lighter back here, but here's where I'm going to get some of these little strokes. Too much water. There we go. I'm going to pull some of those ripples out in here in a horizontal manner. And then it gets really blue right in here. Pulls out clear over here. So we'll get some of these wiggle woggles. There we go. There we go. It's nice and sharp edge there, so even if it's not, I can deal with it. There. Oh man, that's fun. Get a lot of that blue going. We'll pull more of that blue right up in here, right along that edge, right up in here. There's a little blue thing right there. All right. So you can see how that has really kind of blended together and created a nice effect. Got these nice highlights right over here on this shoreline. I'm going to just paint in a little sharp edge detail right in here and suggest some sort of structures. It doesn't have to be a lot of detail, just something darker. And I'm going to throw just a little smidge of color on a secondary hill right back here. Just suggest it with a very faint wash. There we go. And I got a drop of water right there. I'm just going to try to ignore it. If I mess with it, I'm going to draw attention to it. So right now, I would say we have blocked this piece to a point we need to just stop and let it dry for a few minutes. And then we can come back in and work with getting some detail going. I got a bloom going right there. It looks like I have another drop of water. So what I'm going to do while it's wet, just going to introduce more pigment into it, and we'll just swap it out. And hopefully we just controlled that bloom right there. All right. So right now we just need to let this dry and trust that everything is going to dry the way we want it to. And I'm just going to throw a few more of these streaks of ripples right in through here and right over here. Where it's dried, I'm going to get some nice sharp waves and ripples happening. So there we go. All right, let's let this dry and trust that my little wet spots aren't going to dry in an annoying manner. So, all right, so there we go. We've color blocked it. Actually, we had 2 color blockings, and it's all been with 1, 2 blues. In general, we're just varying the intensity of the blues to create the mountain range, the water ripples, and just toning down all the hot spots on the paper. So, and hopefully my little wet spots and dribbles aren't going to be an annoyance that I'll have to fix. Yeah, as soon as this dries, we'll jump into stage 2 and we'll get some of that intensified saturated color and a little more structure starting to happen before we jump into stage 3 and really go after all the detail. So let's let this dry. All right, so the piece is dried a little bit. I still have my wet spot up there in the corner, that little drop of water that's still wet, but everything else so far is dried enough that I think we can proceed. I'm going to switch over to a medium-sized round brush. I'm going to start working up a little more of the saturation in the right at the shoreline, right at that horizon line from the hill to the water. I'm going to intensify the blues right there a little bit and really start building maybe a little bit more of the structure on the boat with ranges of blue, and we should get going pretty quick on stage 2. All right. All right, so I've grabbed my batch of rounds. I've got a number 5 round that I'm going to use. All right, so let me mix up another little bit thicker concoction of the blue here. So it's a little denser color of blue, more like an in-between coffee and tea state. And there's a nice edge right up here. There's kind of a tree line and a highlight edge. I'm going to just accentuate that right along in here with some of this darker blue. And I'm just going to paint this irregular line right along that shoreline, right along in here. Okay, and kind of intensify that, and then I'll just unload my brush and I'll just feather that out a little bit. I'll just push it around, push it up that hill. Again, it's all very irregular. We just want to intensify and pull a little more of a value range right along that edge. So right up there. Again, this is where that nice slow paper really comes into its own. It really works well when you want to kind of intensify and find some of those shadows. I got some really nice little spots right here that read or can read as some sort of maybe a row of boats in the distance at the shore. So again, just dragging that over. We'll even come up along this one, come right up here. It's just irregular marks. I'm just zigzagging around. That paper is going to stay wet long enough. I can unload my brush, just get some water and feather that out. Use directional lines to indicate it's going up the hill there. So we're just getting some pretty cool effects happening. All right, same thing. I'm going to come right up in here, add a little more right along that edge right there. So painting hills, or some sort of a mountain maybe. Yeah, there we go. Really intensified that. Let's feather out this irregular stuff right here. So we got kind of a layered tree line going on there. Pull it out. There we go. Cool. And then right there on the opposite end, right on the underneath side of it, there's actually a barge sitting in the photograph. I'm not actually going to paint the barge. I'm just going to keep all of the shapes that I'm seeing. I'm just going to suggest things. And I'm just going to fake it out. There we go. Right like that. Right along that edge. Right there. I'm going to throw a little saturation right next to it. Right where those highlights are. I'm going to put a little darker color. I want the sharp edge on the top. And then I'll feather the bottom edge of that line. So we'll just pull it down. It's going to go this direction. All right. And we'll start getting some of that ripple effect. Cool. All right. We're just really painting with just one color at this point. So, all right. I want to come down over here now. Just going to actually just use this blue, and I'm going to paint a little structure right in here. There we go. A little more. A little bit. We got a highlight edge on this side. And what I'll probably do is rescue that highlight as I come towards the end of it. All right. A little white, my little pro white, yeah. Once you see the pro white coming out, you know the piece is coming to an end. I got water on my reference. So, all right. And I'll just throw a little bit of this right in through here. There we go. And let's throw a little bit right in here. Nice little dark shape, some sort of a shape right there. All right. And throw a little more right in here. Just a bit right in here too. Okay, so. All right, well, that's all drying. I got plenty of time on that since this paper is so slow. I'm going to mix up a neutral. I'm going to paint these rocks in the front. All right, so it needs, I think we need just a smidge of some burnt, or well, that's some Payne's Gray right there. I'm going to get just a little bit of maybe burnt sienna. I just want a kind of a neutral grayish brown. And I'll just come in, I'm just going to scrub it in. This rock has a lot of texture to it, so a little dry brush action right there. Come in, feather it a little bit, mix it up. I'm going to get a little orange and a little more sienna in that. There we go. So I'm going to throw a little of that on this one. This one's got a little more color to it. There we go. Cool. Pull it down. There's some nice colors happening right in through here. Got an interesting shape right there. We went from positive to negative right there. There we go. And get a little more of the brownish, more brownish. I'm going to throw that right down up in here. Cool. Feather it out. I keep getting water on my thing here. All right, come here. There we go. Poor placement for my water. I want to pull that away a little bit. There we go. All right, then we'll soften that out. And there's just going to be a very slight, this is very thin. Just throwing this on there just for texture on that rock. All right, so that's nice and blocked. I'm going to throw a little more of a glaze of color. This needs to be a little darker right down in through here, so I'm just going to glaze a little more color. I'll try to keep some of those ripple highlights. There we go. Good. All right, so that's stage 2. We just added a little more saturation, made a little more definition, and this really needs to dry now so we can come in and we're going to start working with a thicker mixture of watercolor, more in the cream and milk stage, where we're really going to start punching up the detail and finding all the structure and contrast, and everything's going to start popping in this next stage. So we're going to let this dry pretty thoroughly before we get going, and it'll take just a minute. So hang on. All right, it's stage 3 time. We're going to start in on the boat and really kind of build the structure on it, get some of the, there's some color blocking that still has to happen on some of the components on the boat, but this is where all the fun's going to start happening. The contrast, the structure, and everything's going to start coming together in this stage, and let's get going. All right, so I'm switching over to a number 3 round, and I got my number 1 round ready to go just in case I need it. And again, I'm going to just mix up a very thick mixture of some blue, dark blue, brown, that burnt umber, and blue mixture, fairly thick. So I'm going to do a little structural drawing and line work with this right now. So just really some drawing. So I don't feel any wet spots anywhere. So first things first, let's just get a little structure going there. And you know what? That's not even dark enough yet. So let me get a little more pigment going here. There we go. All right, there we go. Now I can come in and we're going to really kind of look for the darkest darks in this and structure it up. So all right, we'll pull it right down along there. All right, all the nice little edges, I'm just going to paint those things in real quick. There we go. We got the top of the boat right there. We got this lip and edge, comes right around and then wraps around. It's kind of a broken edge that goes from thick to thin and intermittent as we come around. Over here, it's going to define this whole side right there. Nice little edge right there. It goes from an edge to a shadow. We lose an edge right in there, so we'll just kind of soften that up and pull it out. Make it irregular. There we go. And we'll pull this side down. We got another one coming in. There's another actually right up here. It's going to come right up like this, come out and around like this. It's going to come down and around that shape. It's kind of an irregular. It's going to be a more consistent edge on the bottom and irregular on the top. So it'll kind of go from thick to thin all the way around like that. And then this right up here picks up right here, and then it's going to come around and bend all the way around the front part of the boat. Okay, just soften that out. It's very hard to distinguish in there. It's happening, but you don't want to oversell it. So we'll just soften it out and pull it down. This becomes kind of value right there. All right. Get some of this blue. There we go. Right there. And I'm just going to pull it just enough to kind of connect right down here like that and feather it out. There we go. Cool. And now back to it. There we go. All right, so all right. And it's really dark right up here. I'm going to pull that right up there like that. We're going to have some ripples, but follows that rock right there. Comes around, we'll pull it on out. It's really the darkest right up here. All right, we'll throw a little bit over this way. And we've got a shape right here on the side of the boat that is going to then reflect in the water here. There we go. Cool. And I'm going to go back to the blue, a little brighter blue right there. I'm going to throw a lot of that right in through here. I'm going to transition into the dark. There we go. I'll deal with that later. All right. Okay, more of that blue. We're going to get the backside of the boat ripples. Throw it over here like this. All right. I'm going to get some, that's going to dry. I'm going to get some of this orange. I want to paint those life preservers real quick with a little reds and some oranges. All right, we'll just get these going real quick. Okay, we're just going to leave a lot of little peekaboos, irregular peekaboos in here. Get some of that right here. I'll throw one right up here. It's probably not correct. That one's the blue one. I'm just going to throw this little orange one right there. And it's sitting on top of a lot of blue, so it's not going to be very vivid. And we may have to punch that up with some cream-oriented colors. I'm going to throw a little more tone right up in through here. There we go. And right on the back side, I'm just going to, just needs a little color. There it is. All right, cool. All right, I'm going to throw just a smidge of color down in here, right over here. We got some colors right up in here as well. Some sort of a nice orange something happening right there. All right, cool. And then we got a little bit of that happening out here in the water. It's catching some of the reflections off of the buoy or the life preservers. Cool. All right, now back to the darker colors again. Some really dark, get some blues into that as well. There we go. I want to come after this again, just to really punch it up. And right in here. Cool. All right. That, and then right back here, I'm going to get some of that dark blue. While that's drying real quick, I'm just going to come in and catch a couple of shapes in the distance and suggest some there we go. All right, so, and while that's drying, I'm going to work on the rocks real quick. So I can do that. We'll just kind of, this is where if you did my rock tutorial from earlier in the last season, this is where doing rocks pays off. Remember, keep rocks pretty angular. There we go. All right. Little dry brush. Everything's working pretty well. So far, so good. There we go. Get this one. Cool. All right. Now, the boat's looking pretty good so far. I'll throw a little more noise into this. And there's definitely some letter forms happening back over here. I'm just going to fake them in. Got a thicker edge right up here. I need to get this a little thicker right up in here. A little crunchier. Cool. Yeah, we're starting to sing now. It's looking good. And there's actually some writing along right in here. I'm just going to fake that in right there. Get that bow just right. Good. Get this back side right there. Yeah, now we're just messing around, getting all the little fussy spots and highlights and changes in directions. And I'm going to go after those life preservers here in a second. Before I do, I'm going to get some of this yellow, a little of that orange right there. And I'm just going to pop a little bit of it back in here, right on that highlight. Just, it's not accurate to the photograph, but I like the yellow back there. It's a nice little pop of color that could be about anything. And I'm going to throw a little bit right. I'm going to get a little more of the orange right there. I'll throw a little bit of that right in here. Who knows what that is? It's just off in the distance, right? All right. And as that's drying, I'm going to, oh, that needs to be kind of a dirty red. All right. So there we go. I'm just going to fake in some letters. All right. Got that nice dirty red. I'm going to throw a little bit of a shadow on this little life preserver right back here. And on the underneath side of these over here, where they're sitting. All right. I totally misspelled that. That's why graphic designers have copywriters. We can't spell worth a damn. Gotta get my head out of it, hopefully. All right. So yeah, I'm really just punching up shapes. contrasts. Cool. I'm going to add a little more density right in here. I want to just throw some blue on it. So all that work I just did, I'm going to kill it just by doing that. Then I'm going to feather it. There we go. And it needs more blues right up under here. Needs to be darker. There we go. And I'm going to throw a little more tone right up under here. Like that. Cool. Just maybe a few streaks over here like that. Feather it a little more. There we go. I'm going to get a little more of the yellow, orange. We've got too many hot spots. I'm just going to knock back some of those whites. And I'm going to maybe go after them with more of a pro white at the back end of it. Add in some paint right there. Throw that blue right there on that one. Good. Thought I saw another one I did. It's right here. I'm going to throw him right here. Good. And get a little with color here. I'm just going to throw some splatters on it, on the rocks. There we go. Can't beat that. All right, now, real quick, while that's all drying, I'm going to get a slightly bigger brush, and I'm going to come back in, and I'm going to paint a little more of the ripples. I'm going to intensify some of these ripples. So, and that's pretty damn dark. I'll feather that out maybe a little bit. There we go. All right, so come right up against it. There we go. And right up against it here. Here's where I'm going to feather it a little bit. I'll soften all that out a little bit. So these are just kind of irregular horizontal marks to get that ripply effect. And as they get closer to us, they get further apart. And as they go off in the distance, they really kind of merge together. And get it right up over here as well. So we're getting close to just about ready to start popping in highlights and recapturing some of those hotter areas. So right up against the boat, right there, and right there. There's one right here. I'm just going to throw it in there. There we go. Cool. And I'm going to throw one right down over here. This is where you really have a lot of fun. Just being interpretive. Don't worry about placing these things. The more expressive you are and free with making these marks, the better it's going to look. So, all right, cool. I'll feather these just a little bit. Boom, 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 boom. All right, now I want to get a little more of that orange. I want to just keep hitting this a little more. It's just going to be a big mass of orange, big shapes. Cool. Right in through here, right on that. And there's some right up in here. I'm just going to pop it right in there. All right. Cool. And I'm going to get a really dark orange. I'm going to hit some really little spots. I'm just going to dab around like the really dense shadows back in this. All right. All right, cool. All right, it's whiteout time. Pro white time. Let's see if we can rescue some of these little highlights. We'll just pull them back from the brink of disaster. Danger, Will Robinson. All right. So there's some really nice highlights right up here on this edge. If I had taken a little more time, I could have probably kept them. But as long as it looks okay with Pro White, it doesn't really matter. All right, cool. I'm looking for wet spots. Oops, sorry. Cool. All right, so I'm just going to keep bouncing around, just finding some of those crunchy edges. There's a nice one right back here. We got some nice highlights right on the top of that deck. Right back in here. Right on the top edge of these life preservers. We got the tags on them. There we go. All right, there's going to be a couple right over here. Here we go. I'm going to throw a couple right on the edge of this rock, right there. All right, and I'm going to just put a few of them. Hang on, I got to get this a little better right here. There we go. And this is really a pretty simple composition. It's something that's very easily done. Very simple shapes, suggestions, and that's really one of the main things you learn to do when you're creating artwork and drawing without adding tons and tons and tons of detail to it. You're just bouncing around adding these little spots of color, highlights, all the little things that will make it pop. A little one right in there. There we go. So come on. All right. And I've got one thing that is driving me bananas. And it's what was driving me bananas early on was that little spot right there where that schmutz got into the wash. So we'll just get some blue. This is a high risk move. I'm just going to throw a little bird up there. There we go. A little tail. Oh, too much. Too much. There we go. There we go. I got a little bird. That's all I'm going to do. I'm going to resist the urge to put another one up there. So punching up the contrast just a little bit. All right, there we go. We have a nice little scene of a boat in the water with ripples, and we got a little bird from a mistake I made. My little water drop didn't turn out to be a problem after all, and I hope I did this under an hour. So we'll see in the edit. So, hey, I hope you got some value out of this tutorial. If you did, please give me a like and a subscribe. Head over to my video description. I have a bunch of links in there for supplies and equipment. And there's some downloads on my website. The link's in the description as well. Get over there and grab some Loomis drawing heads and hands drawing for all it's worth. So if you're wanting to pick up some figure drawing as well, get out there and download it from my website. And if you think I'm doing anything on this channel that you would like to support financially, head over to my Patreon channel and give me a $5 a month membership. I truly do appreciate it. It's going to help me keep things going and continuing to make these kind of videos for everybody to learn from and to pick up the joys of watercolor. So, hey, I hope to see you in the next tutorial. See you later.